Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ricky and I am a competitive ballroom dancer and makeup artist. Today we are doing my version of the do's and don'ts of ballroom dancing makeup. All the do's and don'ts said in this video is literally just my opinion. Do not feel like you have to follow exactly what I'm saying, what you should and you shouldn't do. I would always say that the best piece of advice is to practice and do whatever makes you feel the most beautiful and confident on the competition floor as possible. I just wanted to make this video because I feel like it would have been super helpful when I was learning how to do ballroom makeup on myself a few years ago, and I'm just hoping that it can help other people out there. Anyways, that is more than enough rambling, so let's just get straight into the video. Okay, so first thing is that this is going to be the do's side of my face, so everything that I would recommend doing, that I try to do when I compete. This is going to be the don'ts, all the things that I would usually try to stay away from, and don't feel bad if you're watching this video and I'm like, don't do this, and you usually do that. There's so much stuff on the don't side of my face that I have done so many times that I've just hopefully learned and improved from to the do side of my face. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do for my brows is obviously the color. And the number one thing that I always see is that I always feel like sometimes girls fill in their eyebrows way too dark. So I'm gonna try to use a complementary shade on my eyebrow on this side, and then I'll use an eyeshadow that's a little bit too dark for me on the other side. So hopefully you'll see what I'm talking about. All right, so for the tail of the brow, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to keep the beginning of my brow and the end of the brow as straight as possible. So in other words, I'm not going to do the tail of my brow down this direction. I'm going to try to pull the tail of my brow out, kind of if I imagine I'm going towards the top of my ear. All right, now that brow is done, you can kind of see when I'm looking straight forward that this is still pretty open-ended, so the eye area is nice and lifted. Now I'm gonna go ahead and do the don't side. I'm gonna use a shade that's a little bit too dark for me. I'm going to pull the brow down like I used to do it. Don't worry, I used to do this all the time. And then also, I'm not going to make it very gradient in the beginning here. I'm just gonna kind of fill it in all one color that's a very opaque dark color. As you can see, when I'm looking straight, this side is kind of starting to close off the shape of my eye. All right, now we're going to do a step that I was missing for so long, and that is brow gel. So I'm going to do brow gel on this side to set the hairs in place where I want them to stay for the day of the competition, and this side I'm just gonna leave it as it is. So I'm using the P. Louise base. This is in the shade Rumor 2. I use this for basically every single makeup look ever, and I always use it to carve out my brows. You don't need this base to do it. You can use a concealer or a different eyeshadow base that you have. Do not feel like you have to go and buy this, but this is just what I'm going to use to carve out my brow underneath to give it whatever shape that I would like that day. All right, now that it's completely underlined, I'm just going to take the rest of what is on the back of my hand and I'm just going to pull it down and start priming my entire eyelid area. This is another do. You want to prime all the way basically from where your nose starts all the way out to here. And this is a step that I was definitely missing. I would always prime just on my eyelid area. So I'm going to prime everywhere, including underneath my eye as well, because eyeshadows are going there as well at the end of the look. I'm just going to take a little beauty blender to blend that all together. All right, now trust me, there were many times where I did not know eyeshadow primer was a thing or even use concealer. So I'm just gonna leave this one blank. All right before we get into eyeshadow is where the tape comes in. Now you do not have to use Scotch tape. You can literally use any tape that you have, preferably a eye makeup tape. Those are probably a lot safer. What I always like to do is I always take the Scotch tape off. If you've seen any of my tutorials before, you already know what I'm about to say. You're gonna put it on the back of your hand. You're gonna pull it off at least a few times. I used to do this for so many years, so do not feel like you're crazy if you do this, but I used to put my tape literally exactly right at the corner of my eye. But I realized if you're doing that, you're not going to have a seamless blend from the lower lash line eyeshadow to the top eyeshadow. So what I'm going to do on my do side is I'm going to put it not at the corner, but a little bit of space there that allows me to make a cohesive eye look at the end from the top and bottom shadows when they come out together on the outside. I'm also placing the tape towards my temple instead of going up towards the tail of my brow, because then it's just gonna close off where we can do our eyeshadow and it's just gonna be like not good. Placing the tape exactly at the corner of my eye, not leaving enough space to blend the eyeshadow together later. All right, time for the eyeshadow. I am using the original Morphe Jaclyn Hill palette today. Of course, I have many other palettes now, and I don't reach for this one as much, but when I'm doing specifically basic ballroom makeup tutorials, I really don't know a better palette, so we are gonna be using this one today. All right, do number one. Specifically when I'm doing ballroom makeup competition looks, I really like to match my brow bone highlight with my inner corner highlight. And I find that even still, sometimes I forget to do this. I just go straight with my eyeshadow, and then at the end, I start doing the highlight, but I don't really like how it blends that way. So I find that when you put the highlighters down first and then you blend the shadows over top of it, it gives a nice seamless finish from the blended eyeshadows into that brow bone highlight. So it's not just completely sticking out like you put it on top of the eyeshadows that you already spent so long blending. I'm going to take this second shade in the palette right here, which is very light, very reflective, super versatile, and I'm just going to pop that right underneath the arch of my brow and on the inner corner. I used to do it where I literally just had a stripe of highlighter from here all the way to the end, and I started to not like that look, so I did it differently. So now I have it the brightest here, and then I kind of fade it in and fade it out from there. As for this side, I'm going to try my best to remember to do the highlighter at the end, and we'll see how that affects how it looks from the do side and the don't side. All right, now going in with this shade of the palette. As you can see, I've hit pan on it because I've used it so many times. This shade is going to be my transition shade, which basically just means I'm putting it down before all my other eyeshadows that I'm going to work with, so those shadows have something to work into. If you're missing your transition shade, it's going to make it a lot harder to blend colors together. So I'm going to put my transition shade down from inner to outer corner on this side and move on to the next step. Perfect. It's literally so easy. It does not have to be super precise or clean. You're literally just throwing it in there so other shadows have a chance to blend together easier with this base shadow already down. We are going to be working with the black today, so I'm going to be using some darker shades in this corner of the palette. So starting with this one. So we're going a little bit too high on this one, and this one we're going to keep it nice and low in the crease for initial placement, and then slowly blend it out to go into the crease to blend with that base shadow that we have down. I'm also going to concentrate this shade right on the outer third of my eye, and when I start to blend it up and start to blend it in towards my inner corner, I'm going to be a lot lighter with my brush to make sure that we have a nice gradient from lighter to darker as we go from inner to outer corner. All right, we're gonna leave it pretty much just like that from now, and without blending it so much, you can already see that there is a nicer gradient because of that base shade that we put down, and it's not just a very dark shade and the highlight shade. Now it's time to go to the don't side. I'm gonna place it right on that crease, so by the time it blends out, it's gonna be a little bit too high. And I'm not concentrating that just on the outer edge. I'm basically gonna bring it from the same amount of concentration from the outer to inner corner on this side. All right, now that that shade is placed, I'm gonna start blending out the edges. Okay, as you can see, because we didn't put that base transition shade down, it's having a harder time blending from the dark part of the pigment up into my bare skin. As on this side, you can see it is a little bit darker, then it goes to a little bit lighter, and then it goes to that highlight shade, which is already down. And on this side, it's basically just trying to blend it into nothing seamlessly is really, really difficult. All right, now I'm going to mix this dark brown shade together and the black, so it's gonna be mostly brown with a little bit of black in it. And what I'm gonna do is the same as I did with the shade before. This is a little bit smaller, so it's gonna keep the color more concentrated, but I'm just gonna pack that right in the outer V, which is underneath the crease. It's not going in the crease. And then once I blend it out, it will start to blend up into that crease and right against that tape. You do not wanna forget to blend it against that tape, because when we take it off, you don't want it to be a patch of black and then brown before it gets to the tape. You want it to be cohesive all the way through, so it's black until where that tape is starting. And as it's starting to get more and more blended out with a lighter hand, I'm just going to softly blend it towards the inner corner, so it is a gradient from light to dark, from inner to outer corner, just like the last shade that we did. All right, now we're gonna go to the other side, and I'm gonna place that black/brown shade mixture basically in my crease. So before putting it below my crease and blending it up, it's gonna go right in that crease, and then we're gonna blend it up into the shade that we did before. All right, guys, this side is looking a little bit scary. Of course, it wouldn't be the end of the world if I left my eyeshadow like that, but another do would be to always go back in with your lighter shades to blend them up in layers after you've placed the darkest shade. It's very hard to just place the darkest shade and blend it and just have a seamless blend, as you can see on that side. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna take those two brown shades that I used before and blend them up again in the opposite pattern that we placed them. So I did light, medium, dark, and now since I've placed it dark, I'm gonna go medium and light again to help blend it up all together. Now that those are a little bit more blended up in layers, it is time for the lid shade. You can do white, you can do black, make it smoky, you can do blue, you can do purple, you can do anything you want. The easiest way to do would be just take that same highlighter shade that we use and place it right on the inner half of your eye, blending it into the black eyeshadow. But actually, I've gotten this shimmering cream eyeshadow recently, and for some reason, I just wanted to use it. And it basically just looks like this. I'm gonna place that on my full lid here, just with my finger, and on this side I'm just gonna place it with my finger on the inner to the half of my eye, and then I'm gonna go back in with my MAC 217 and kind of blend that black into this cream eyeshadow. All right, now that shade is a little bit more blended in with the black, and that is completely on. It's time for some eyeliner. The only don't that I have is when I used to do this all the time, is make my eyeliner too long because I was trying to get it thin. So sometimes I would do a really thick eyeliner, and of course you want the tail to be thin, so I would have to keep lengthening it and making it longer, and it would basically go all the way up to my brow. So I'm gonna make this liner a little bit too long, and then I'm going to make this liner as long as I would usually do it for the comp. Also, I lied, I have another do and don't for eyeliner, and that is basically that you want to bring your eyeliner all the way in to the inner corner. On this side, I've done it on the inner corner, but it's not really dark enough that you'll be able to see that once my eyelashes are on. If you're going for that look, then perfect, but if you're not going for that look, I suggest always paying extra attention right on that inner corner and making sure it's thick enough and dark enough all the way to your tear duct zone. All right, hopefully you can see that kind of the shape of my eye if I'm looking straight at the camera. This eye is kind of shaped very down, and the eyeliner is basically going to the tail of my brow. Because we didn't bring the brow tail down so much and the tape too much up towards the brow, this side of my eye is still looking lifted and pulled back and open, and I feel like this side is starting to pull our eyes down a little bit. All right guys, it's time for the eyelashes, which is like literally my favorite part of every single makeup look. I'm gonna be using the LD Authentic lashes. This is in the style Viennese, and this is what they look like. Absolutely gorgeous. All right, so the do and don't with these lashes is going to be cutting. And the reason why I say this is because I never ever apply lashes without cutting them to the length of my eye. Every time I have a new pair of lashes that have not been cut yet, I take them out and I cut them. And before I cut them, I place them on my eye to see if I want to cut it from the inner corner or if I want to cut it from the outer corner, depending on the look that I'm going for. Because these lashes are lighter in the center and fuller more towards the end, it's likely that I'm probably going to cut off a tiny bit of the end because I want to keep that gradient from full lashes to thin lashes. And that's just for the look that I'm going for. That's just my preference. So I'm going to take these out of the box. I'm going to cut one of them to my liking after I try it on my eye. And then the other one I'm not going to cut. I'm just going to use it straight out of the box. What I always like to do is when my lash glue is drying is when I do my mascara and also my tight lining. And I'm just going to tight line from the inner and outer corner right underneath my lash line. I'm going to leave this lash line blank so you'll see, hopefully, if I'm looking up, that it's very blank there, and on this side, once it's done, it will be black and it will mesh with the top liner and the lash much better than leaving it blank. All right, and usually if you're really quick with this step, you still have time before your lashes are done drying. And I like to do a thin coat. I don't like to make it so thick because I feel like when I do a thick coat of mascara, it's not going to blend my natural lashes with the false lashes as easily. So I just do a super quick coat just to get my lashes black. All right, time to apply the lash. This is what it looks like out of the box. And this is the one that I did cut to fit my eye a little bit from the outer edge. So I'm gonna place it right in the middle of my eye and then place the outer and inner corners. All right, now I'm gonna go in with the exact same technique. The lash glue I did let dry because I'm not trying to move around a sloppy lash right now. So I'm gonna apply this, but since I didn't cut it, we'll see if it affects the shape of my eye or not. I'm gonna press down my lashes together, even though this is the don't side, because it's too long. I have to press them together just so it won't come off. And then on this side, as I always do, usually I'll take the tweezers and press them together. If you don't have tweezers, you can still use your fingers. You're just gonna look down, grab the lashes, and then very gently tap them together. I can definitely tell on this side, because I cut off the end, it's extremely lifted and extremely full right at the end of the lash, which is the look that I was going for. On this side, you can see if I'm looking straight, there is a little peak of eyelash there. If that doesn't bother you, you can totally completely leave it there if that's the way that you like it. But definitely I feel like it's kind of making my eye droop down a little bit. I'll press it up more. Kind of matches a little bit better, but as we're pressing it up, you might be able to tell that that tight line under there hasn't been lined. And on this side, since we tight lined, it is like perfectly, completely opaque black. All right, right before we go to the face makeup, I remembered that we still have to highlight on the side. So I'm gonna use the same highlighting shade that I did for the do side and the exact same brush. And I'm gonna go ahead and highlight my brow bone. Now I'm just trying to blend it in a little bit with that brown shade. The only problem is that sometimes I feel when I do that, when I'm looking forward, you can only see my lash and the highlight shade. And on this side, you see the lash, you see the liner, you see that kind of when I'm looking down, the blacks blended into the brown, blended into that neutral shade, blended into that highlight. When it's hitting the light, you can see that kind of conversion of all the shades. I used to do my highlighter like this, but now I do my highlighter like this. All right, guys, now it's time for the face makeup. I'm gonna do my best to keep it as sweet, short, and concise as possible. Don't number one. Do not use a foundation that is too dark or too light for you. Usually on the competition, I am much darker. So the foundation that I'm using today is not the foundation that I would use on the competition, but I am gonna match it to my neck. So I'm not gonna do super dark foundation on one side and super light, but I'm just gonna go in and put this foundation all over my face evenly. The only do and don't that I will be able to do with this is that on the do side, I am always for the competition, blending my foundation down my neck. I don't have to blend it all the way down to my collarbone, but I need to blend it from my chin across the jawline, right underneath that jawline and down at least a few inches into where my tanner is. I always add foundation to my beauty blender or on my brush, and I really pull it down and I blend it here to make that transition from neck to face makeup as seamless as possible. And on the don't side, I'm just gonna stop blending my foundation when I get to the bottom of my jaw. And then of course I'm taking a little bit more of foundation on my brush and I'm just going to blend it underneath and down a little bit onto my neck. Even though right now my face and my neck are already the same color, imagine at the competition, they're usually not the same color. You always want to make sure that you're getting behind your ears, and if your ears are a different color, which they usually are, I always take that foundation and I go right over my ear to make sure that my ear is not white and the rest of my face is tan. All right, now it is time for concealer. A big don't is don't do a concealer that's too light, contrasting on your foundation. Now, in terms of placement, on the do side, I am just going to place a little bit right on that inner part of my eye, kind of like a triangle. And then I'm also going to go underneath the eyeliner because I want my skin to be lifted and bright on the edge. On this side, I'm going to bring it way too far down like this. The only problem is that it only lifts this part of your face. That's why I don't really like doing this technique anymore. It still works okay, but I just don't like that it doesn't lift that side of my face literally at all. All right, time for powder. So what I like to do is I like to use the loose powder and kind of build it up in the layers on the parts where I want it to be the most set. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in with the loose powder over the rest of my face where it doesn't need to be set like I'm going swimming or something. It just needs to be set for the foundation to stay in place. When I'm going in with a loose powder, I really like to use my damp beauty blender that I've already used to blend out the rest of my face. So I'm just going to get some of that powder on here and I'm going to go right where that concealer was on the do side. I also really like to put this powder right on my nose, right around the edges of my nose, because for some reason, foundation absolutely loves to fall off there. So I always want to set right around my nose and on top of my nose. And then the last place that I like to set it is always in between my brows and right in the center of my forehead. On the other side, I'm just gonna take a brush. I'm gonna take some of that loose powder on the edge of my brush, and I'm just gonna put that in the same place on this side. But because I'm not using a sponge, I don't really feel like it melts it into the skin so much, and I just feel like it kind of can end up sitting on top. All right, now just taking the pressed powder from Maybelline Fit Me, I'm just going to take some of that and literally I don't really like to swipe it that much. I just like to press it in and kind of press it into my skin on the rest of the part where we didn't use that loose powder. And of course, I always put that right underneath my jaw where we put that extra foundation, and I always blend my pressed powder down my neck. And on this side, I'm not gonna blend it down to my neck. I'm just gonna go ahead and swirl it and kind of put it on my face how I used to do all the time. All right, now we get to the bronzer. Do and don't number one on the bronzer. Do not use a bronzer that is too dark for you. I don't know why, it's like super tempting to use a super dark bronzer. All right, now we get to the actual application of bronzer. I always start literally at the back, pretty much where my hair is. Like it's literally like halfway into my hair. And I just start bronzing right where my hairline is. I never want to start bronzing right here because then I feel like I get too much here and it's hard to blend it back. So what I'm going to do is I make sure the darkest point is always at the back and it's blending into my hair. The placement is very, very high. I used to put it, I'm going to show you, I used to put it right here, right underneath my cheekbone. So I'm starting at the back, and then after doing that, I'm bringing it forward. All right, of course, now I'm going to go up into the hairline, and then as it gets a little bit lighter, I'm just going to kind of pull it down a little bit to match up here to the darkest part, which is at the back. All right, we're going to pause there for now and go into the don't side. I'm going to take just a little bit. I'm not going to place this on the top of my cheekbone like I did on the other side. I'm going to place this in my cheekbone the way that I used to do it. And I'm just going to start blending that instead of starting to doing it at the back. All right, now I'm starting to blend it backwards and up into my hairline and towards the top of my face. All right, so after blending that into the jawline, when I look to the side, I basically have that huge stripe of bronzer. On this side, you don't really see a huge stripe of bronzer across my face and you just see a nice gradient bronze. Here, I feel like it's really just bringing my skin down rather than kind of tapering my face in the shape that I want to. All right, because this is already dark from the other side, I'm not going to use any additional product, and I tried to get most of that butter bronzer off of the brush. I'm just going to very lightly bronze my jawline, and of course with my foundation that is usually much more tan than my neck is right now, I always blend that bronzer into my foundation. So we had the tanner, we blended the foundation down, we blended the powder down, and now we're blending the bronzer down. Now it is time for blush. This is the shade that we're using today. So first I'm just going to show you the technique on the do and the don't. So what I would say is once I have the blush on, I don't immediately go right on the apples of my cheeks because I find that it's going to apply way too much product right there. So what I like to do, I like to start from the back like I do with the bronzer and kind of bring it forward, back and forth, back and forth. And when I kind of start to see that blush color build up, I kind of pull it forward towards the apple of my cheeks, because if I press it right here on the apple of my cheek, it's just going to be a pink dot there and it's harder to blend it back. Make sure you're always getting the excess pigment off. And from the back, very, very lightly, you can see that it is very pigmented. You can see that I have a blush and it is kind of blended with that bronzer a little bit, but it's not too concentrated right on the apple of my cheek. I'm going to go in with a little bit of more, tap off the excess, and I'm going to apply it right on the apple of my cheek. And then after I put it on the cheek, I would always kind of like bring it up to blend it with the bronzer. But from there, you can see that it's like this side is just overwhelmed with so many products, you can't even see my foundation anymore. And I feel like this side, although the blush is really bright, I like a bright blush and it's not completely overtaking my entire face. All right, before we go on with highlight, I always do my lower lash line. And before I do my lower lash line, I like to blend my blush and my bronzer and my powder together. And I just take a little bit of my pressed powder and I just put that right over the concentrated area, mostly right underneath my eye, and then I'll start to pull it back a little bit. I find that this helps bring the overwhelming tone of the blush down by kind of melting the products together so there's not a huge defined line. This is where the blush starts and stops. So I always make sure to do this with my powder afterwards, and even underneath the bronzer a little bit as well. At this point, since almost our entire face is done, I always go back in with my brow powder and I redefine my brows, because even as you can see here, kind of the top edge of that maybe got a little bit covered with foundation or with powder or something. So I always go in with my brow powder and my brow brush again and usually just redefine those lines so my brows are looking nice and sharp. super easy peasy, and now that brow looks brand new again. All right, it's time for the lower lash line before we go ahead and finish up the makeup look. I like to match the top of my eyeshadow to the bottom. I like to go in with my neutral eyeshadow, in with my medium eyeshadow, and then with my dark eyeshadow. But on the don't side, I'm just gonna go in with my darker shade. All right, we're gonna use a total of 4 makeup brushes today for the lower lash line on the do side. So first, I'm gonna have my 2 blending brushes, and then I have my 2 detail brushes. Starting with the blending brushes, they're the same brush. This one is just smaller. So I always go in with my bigger brush first. I'm gonna go in with that first shade that we use, and I'm just gonna go from inner to outer corner, blowing out and smoking out the lower lash line. All right, now just from the do side to the don't side, hopefully you can already see a difference in how putting that base shade down really helps blend out the shades that we're gonna put on top. Now I'm gonna take the smaller blending brush and I'm going on this shade right here, and I'm just applying that closer to the lash line. Going back in with that bigger blending brush and just blending those 2 shades together. Now it's time to work with the detail brushes. This is super similar to the eyebrow brush that I just used to fill in my brows, but this one is a little bit slimmer. It's super tiny, so it's great for getting really close to the lash line. I'm gonna take the black eyeshadow in the palette, and I'm just going to stamp this across my lash line from the outer corner, stopping about the center. I'm not gonna bring it all the way in. Once we've placed that right on the lash line, I'm going to take a little bit more, and this is why we placed the tape with some room. I'm going to apply some of this, and I'm going to kind of blend where I ended that line into the top eyeliner, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to stamp it and pull it out into that eyeliner that we already have there. Now that I have the black stamped in place basically where I want it, I'm going to go back in with my Morphe E36 with no additional product, and I'm just going to blend the part where I stamped the black eyeshadow with the dark brown eyeshadow. Alright, the last thing we're going to do on the do side, I'm going to go in with my Inglot gel liner again. The same way that we tightlined, I'm going to waterline now, and I'm just going to waterline from the outer to the inner corner. And here I'm just going in and adding some cat eyeliner with my Kat Von D tattoo liner. I really like the shape that it makes from the outer wing all the way to the inner corner, and I love using the tattoo liner for this because it makes it super precise. Alright you guys, now we move to the don't side. I'm going to go ahead and create the dark lower lash line on this side as well. Alright, and once we get to the end, we can kind of see it's a little bit harder to blend the outer corner with the wing because the wing is already completely up, and if we bring it out, it's going to be kind of a circle and then into the wing, and compared to this side, you could really just make it a nice smooth line there. So I pretty much have to leave it like this on this side. I'm just going to make the outer corner a bit darker. Alright guys, not doing your waterline is a huge no for me personally. I really think using the gel liner in the waterline is such a huge thing that really helps the eye look as cohesive as possible. And now it is time to do the cat eyeliner. The only no that I have for cat eyeliner is something that even I still struggle with actually, is the shaping of the cat eyeliner is pretty difficult actually. So I'm gonna go ahead and do my cat eyeliner like I used to do it when I was just learning, and that's basically pulling the eyeliner down too much rather than bringing it in diagonally. Okay, I'm not kidding when I say my cat eyeliner used to look like that. As you can see, when I'm looking at the camera, the cat eyeliner does not look cohesive with what's happening on the outer side of me. When I look to the side, it doesn't look too terrible, but but compared to this side, you can see that it really is a straight line. And when I look forward, this is not doing anything to help shape my eye. It's kind of even making it droop down further. And because we didn't add that thicker liner on the inner corner, like before we put the lashes down, as you can see here, it looks a little funny now. It looks like it's unfinished and that it hasn't really been well thought out all the way through. But this was more about the angle of the cat eyeliner. So this one you can see is coming down, and this one's really going more diagonally towards the bridge of my nose. Now the last step for the eyes is going to be the lower lash mascara. If you're not defining your lower lashes on the competition, I would really recommend to try and see it out, see if you like it. If I had it my way, I would just put falsies on this side to open my eye even more, but I don't have any. So I'm just gonna have to really layer on my mascara to showcase my lower lashes as much as possible, because I really feel like it helps open your eyes much more than just leaving your lower lashes blank, which is what I used to do also, so that's gonna be on the don't side. This is how it looks with the lower lash mascara compared to without the lower lash mascara. I love how much it opens your eyes when you do have that intense lower lashes, whether it's falsies or with mascara. All right, now I'm going in with a little bit more of that highlighter shade that we use, and I'm just reapplying the highlighter right underneath and on top of that cat eyeliner, as I really feel like once it's applied and you're looking straight, it adds a lot of lightness and brightness to the inner corner, and we don't want it to be too dark here and closed. We really want it to be open and bright and have the dramaticness more on the outside. All right, time for highlighter. We've almost made it to the finish line, you guys. I'm gonna use the same palette that I use for my blush. I'm going to use this middle highlight shade here and a little bit of this bright highlight shade here. So I always try to see the skin tone that I have and pick a highlighter based on that. So we want it to be bright, but we also want it to have more of a natural looking finish and not like there's a white beam of highlight stuck to your face. I'm gonna place that very gently right on the top of my cheekbone, so gently that you can almost not see it in the beginning. I like to build up my highlight because sometimes you just go too overboard in the beginning and then you can't take it off. And now that I see that I have that highlight there, I start blending it up and kind of blending it very softly over the apples of my cheeks. That's just what I like to do. Once I've kind of built it up a little bit, I take a little bit more of that brighter shade and I make sure that right at the highest part of my cheekbone is where it's popping. So when I look forward, it doesn't look like a gray cast or anything, but when I look to the side, you can really see how bright it is, but it's not like an alarming amount of highlighter where it's just like stripe. On the nose side, I'm basically gonna do that, which is how I used to do my makeup. I'm gonna take that light shade and I'm going to apply basically the same amount of pressure just across the top part of my cheek. So from the top all the way to the bottom. But yeah, so we have the credit card stripe, which is, again, I used to do my makeup like this many times. And also what I used to do is I would put way too much highlight, because I remember when it was so popular to do highlight like this. I feel like it would be too much when you do it above. I do like, though, going a little bit above my brow very softly. Like you see now, it kind of is catching the light a little bit at the top. Of course, it's not as bright as here. This is where it's mainly concentrated, and then I like to go a little bit just very lightly around the brow. And I usually like to just highlight my nose a little bit, not too much. I like to go down the bridge of my nose a little bit and just on the tip, and I also like to go right above the Cupid's bow to kind of accent my lips once the lipstick is on. All right, it is time for the lipstick. So I'm gonna use red lipstick today, but a huge no for me is not lining your lips, either with a lip liner or if you have a little lip brush. As you can see, this is super tiny, but since I have a red lip liner today, I'm gonna line my lips on the do side and I'm not gonna line my lips on the don't. The reason why I think this is so important is because red lipstick is so brutal, especially if you're using a red liquid lipstick. It can stain your skin so quickly, and if you make one little mistake, you might have to spend 10 minutes just trying to correct that mistake. So I always recommend lining your lips first to help create your shape and your guidelines before you go in with the actual lipstick. Okay, now that side of my lips is lined, guys. I look crazy, so I'm gonna go ahead and put on my red lipstick. I find that using the right shade of red for you, for skin tone and for your dress, is super important. Alright guys, so as you can see on this side, I have a much darker red. I just feel like it's not very flattering to me or to my skin tone, and it doesn't pop out, it doesn't stand out. If you are going for a darker red, obviously it can look beautiful, but I definitely prefer something brighter. That's just me. So I have a really bright red on this side, and yeah. This is literally the end of the video, you guys. I hope that you enjoyed this do's and don'ts of ballroom makeup. Again, this is all just my own opinions. This is just something I wish that maybe I had when I was learning how to do makeup, and I hope that it can help you guys in any way, shape, or form. Definitely leave a comment down below saying if you liked this, if it was helpful, or maybe some suggestions for future videos that you would like to see. Again, if you want to catch up with me on social media, that's going to be at RickyTBeauty. Always on Instagram, Facebook, and on TikTok if you want to follow me on there. I have loads of makeup looks and makeup tutorials that don't get posted to YouTube simply because I don't have time to make all those looks into YouTube videos. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!